There's been a lot of trade talk recently with the passing of the USMCA. The USMCA, or the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, is an updated version of the nearly 25-year-old trillion-dollar deal NAFTA. It includes major changes for cars and new policies for labor and environmental standards. There's also new intellectual property protections and digital trade provisions. The trade agreement with Mexico and Canada revises Mexico's labor laws as well as encourages more auto production in North America. Remember in 2016, on the campaign trail, Trump continuously promised to renegotiate NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement, calling it one of the worst trade deals in the history of trade deals ever made.
We are going to renegotiate the worst trade deal ever made in the history, not of our country, in the history of the world. NAFTA, signed by Bill Clinton. A disaster.
And as president, he did so, and now we have the USMCA, which he signed last month.
Today, we're finally ending the NAFTA nightmare and signing into law the brand new US-Mexico-Canada agreement. Very special.
This was also touted a lot in his State of the Union address, where he listed this as one of his major achievements. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing in detail the USMCA, what it means for the US economy, as well as the Mexico and Canada economy, and the details and overview of what's inside. So for starters, there's new country of origin rules. Automobiles must now have 75% of their components manufactured in the US, Canada, or Mexico to qualify for zero tariffs, and this is up from 62.5% under NAFTA. There's also new labor provisions when it comes to the manufacturing of automobiles. 40 to 45% of automobile parts must be manufactured by workers who earn at least $16 an hour by the year of 2023. That's about triple the average wage right now in a Mexican factory. That's meant to force automakers to source fewer parts for an assembled in Mexico car from Japan, Germany, South Korea, or China. The pact also requires 70% of a vehicle's steel and aluminum to originate in North America, with steel being both poured and melted on the continent. Administration officials hope that this provision will either force automakers to buy more supplies from the US or Canada, or it will cause Mexican wages to rise. Critics caution that factories will be able to game the rules by including some highly paid managers in their calculations. Analysts have warned that the wage provision could cause costs to rise for American car companies and car buyers. This could potentially slow the auto market and economic growth overall. But the final provision as written could end up being ultimately ineffective at shifting production because it's not indexed to inflation. An average wage of $16 an hour will be less constraining in the year of 2023 than it is today. Mexico agreed to pass new labor laws to give greater protections to workers, especially migrants and women. And most notably, these laws are supposed to make it a lot easier for Mexican workers to unionize. US farmers will also be getting greater access to the Canadian dairy market. The US got Canada to open up its dairy market for US farmers, which is a big issue for Trump. And there's a ton of new provisions and laws when it comes to intellectual property and digital trade. The deal extends the terms of copyright up to 70 years beyond the life of the author, which is up from 50 years. And there's a bunch of new provisions when it comes to dealing with the digital economy. This includes prohibiting duties on things like music and ebooks, and protections for internet companies so they're not liable for the content that their users might produce. There's also the sunset clause. The agreement adds a 16-year sunset clause. This means that the terms of the agreement expire or sunset after 16 years, as well as the deal is also subject to a review every 6 years. So at that point, the US, Mexico, and Canada can either agree or disagree to extend the USMCA. Now, in June of 2019, Mexico became the first country to ratify the USMCA, but it didn't look the same way when it came to the US. In the US, Democrats on Capitol Hill refused to sign this deal for a very long time. This is because they wanted a stronger enforcement of labor provisions, as well as stricter environmental protections, as well as other changes. So House Democrats formed a working group to work with the administration on those demands. And in December, House Democrats announced that they reached a revised version of the USMCA with the Trump administration.
This is a day we've all been working to and working for, on the path to yes. We were in range for a while, but until we could cross a certain threshold of enforcement for our workers' rights, for environment, and for the prescription drug issue, as you know, they were three of the areas that we had put out there.
This new deal ended up including a lot of the updates that they wanted. One of the big updates was a rapid response mechanism. This called for a 3-person panel of multinational independent experts who will make sure that Mexico abides by its union rules and other protections. This revised version won the support of Richard Trumka. He's the president of the AFL-CIO, which is the largest federation of labor unions in the United States. Now, Trump originally opposed the deal, but actually was okay with this new revised version. Now, many environmental groups still say it doesn't go far enough, and many labor unions are still opposed. But the deal was good enough to gain enough bipartisan support in Congress. And on December 19th, the USMCA passed the House with a landslide majority of 385 to 41. And about a month later, on the same day that the impeachment trial was set to begin for President Trump, the Senate overwhelmingly approved the USMCA 89 to 10. And on January 29th, Trump officially approved the USMCA, which was a major achievement heading into the 2020 election. But the USMCA still is not finalized. Canada still has to ratify it. And Canada's parliament just started that process, though some lawmakers are resisting elements of the deal. But Canada is still likely to endorse it, and when that happens, the USMCA will officially take effect 90 days later. At the White House signing ceremony, Trump stated that we are officially ending the NAFTA nightmare and called it a colossal victory for farmers, factory workers, and other countries. The deal also came with new laws for investment, state-owned enterprise, and currency. The 2082-page pact also came with a major rollback of a special system for arbitration of corporations. This drew bipartisan condemnation, and the Democrats insisted on inserting certain provisions and laws that would help them be able to pass it. The Democrats used their majority of the House to secure long-desired policy changes. The USMCA includes expansive changes that, at least on paper, should level the field for Mexican, Canadian, and American workers. NAFTA's original provisions on labor and the environment were added only as side letters after the original agreement was reached. This was to win the support of Democrats and to ensure the win by the Clinton administration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
On the other hand, the USMCA moves these chapters to the main body of the agreement. This means issues like the right to organize are now subject to the pact's original rules for settling disputes. And the deal also expands these commitments, blocking imports of goods using forced labor. But the deal also comes with less protection for drug companies. In a major concession to the Democrats, the Trump administration agreed to pare back a major protection for a very expensive class of drugs called biologics. The final agreement removes a provision that had offered up to 10 years of protection from cheaper alternatives in Canada and Mexico. It also includes new criminal penalties for theft of trade secrets, including cyber theft. So it will be interesting to see when Canada does decide to ratify it, and when that does happen, the market will most likely react positive to it because it is such a major win for so many companies and firms. I am curious to know your opinion on the USMCA. Do you think it is a good trade agreement? Should we have kept NAFTA? Or do you think this updated version is a better deal? Tell me down in the comments below. I do hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you got value out of it. If you did, be sure to give the video a big thumbs up, smash that like button. And if you'd like to see more videos from my channel, I post videos every single week covering business, finance, entrepreneurship, mindset, strategy, and tips and tricks. Be sure that you subscribe to my channel. I post videos every single week. And if you'd like to be notified every single time I make one, so that way you're first in line to see it before anyone else, be sure that you hit that little notification bell as well, so that we're notified every time I make a new one. See you in the next video.